So what the Chancellor told us today was that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Even after 10 years of austerity, of cutting back on vital services, the services that give us the civilized lifestyles that we want to enjoy. We want to live in a civilized world, in a civilized Britain. And increasingly, government cuts to vital services in health, in elderly care and in the care of children is actually undermining those very public services that make life livable for most of us. And we're going to get another 5 years at least of that. So this is a very depressing statement to make to the British public, and it compounds what we know will be the enormous damage from Brexit. So I'm afraid to say that the picture that the Chancellor has given us is very, very gloomy, and as I said at the beginning, with virtually no light at the end of the tunnel. So what would a responsible, an economically and politically responsible Chancellor do right now? Well, first of all, they would analyse that it's the private economy that is weak. It's the private sector that is heavily indebted, that is timid, that is worried about investing and borrowing money and taking risks and innovating, and it's low productivity in the private sector that is our big problem. Now, for government to be proactive in supporting the private sector requires that government invest in infrastructure, in skills, and in higher wages as a way of lifting both sectors of the economy up further. So I would want to be, if I were Chancellor, I would want to be far more responsible and far more assertive in terms of supporting the private sector with public sector investment. And of course, if I were Chancellor, the very first thing I would do would be to find £20 billion, and a government which is backed by its own central bank and issues its own currency can find £20 billion to fund the NHS, and in particular the mental health services of the NHS, which have been alarmingly starved of resources, alarmingly so, especially at a time when mental health issues have become very serious. So I would have found £20 billion for the NHS, and then I would have insisted that money and grants be transferred to local authorities to expand their revenue, their housing revenue accounts, so that they can begin retrofitting or helping to retrofit all of our housing, public and private, to make it more energy efficient and to help us tackle climate change. We've had extreme weather events and know what that means to us as ordinary households with energy bills and so on. And thirdly, I would have insisted on lifting the caps that have been placed on local authorities for borrowing in order to invest in public housing. Investing in public housing, which in the future will generate the rents that will help pay for that investment, but above all will give affordable housing to people that need it right now, will create jobs, architects' jobs, construction workers' jobs, all kinds of jobs, and generate the income needed and the tax revenues needed to pay for that. So those would be my three priorities: the NHS, retrofitting our housing and allowing local authorities to do that, and building more public housing. And I can assure you that would revive the wider economy, and that's what a responsible Chancellor would do.